We're in a fascinating time and difficult time in history, and our diocese is in that as well. We've already talked about the issues raised to us by the earthquake strengthening, etc., and therefore all of our churches, and we've got a motion to Synod about the earthquake strengthening and what it means for our churches. And for every one of us, we're facing issues there about how we're going to deal with this, and the issues of how much plant and how many buildings we need and how we will resource our buildings. But also it flows up the insurance issue for us. So every parish is now being lumbered with an increased insurance bill. And we're asking ourselves, how can we financially go ahead? We can't continue as we have been. As Tony said so clearly, the normal of yesterday is no longer going to be the normal of the future. But the storm is bigger than just these two issues. This is just, I got Tony Bliss to pull this up. You may have trouble understanding what that is, but this is a graph showing our investments, diocesan investments, and many of you as parishes have investments as well. And this is showing our returns on our investments. Now notice, basically, since 2007, 2008, we've got a negative overall return when we take out the money that we're taking out. Now, we don't know how long the global recession will go for, but there is no obvious end in sight in the short term. So what it means at the moment is we are eating into significant capital across the board. We are living beyond our means as a diocese. And personally, my motto in life is to want to leave a legacy where I leave more than I ever received. And so we have to change. We have to change. Doing what we did yesterday is no longer going to be an option. The investments that we have relied upon to keep us buoyant in the global economic downturn, we are now eating into capital across the board. So we need to change. But that's not the whole storm. There's more. Many of you remember this from the electoral synod information we were sent. This is the profile of who makes up the diocese. And basically, as you can see, once we get to 50 and over, most of the diocese is represented by people who are 50 and over. So those who are under 40 are underrepresented within the diocese. And that's got to change. What we've done yesterday is no longer going to be all right for tomorrow. Next slide. This is the good one though, and I joked about this at clergy conference. As you can see, there's a total population, as you can see, the total population as we get older and older and older, more and more become Anglican. This is the good news. If you extrapolate this graph, by the time somebody turns 100, they will have to be Anglican. Now, what I also want to point out is this though, is although this is problematic and we think that yes, the under 40s are underrepresented, what it does mean though is we have a huge passionate resource base of people who are 60 plus, who have retired, who now have time and energy and passion and have 10, 15 years more ahead of them, at least. And I think we have to rethink the mission of our church, because we have to actually think, actually, the 60, 65, they are the missionaries. They are our missionaries. And we have to rethink how to mobilise this huge, passionate, resilient resource that has been there for generations. We have to now realise that this is one of our key strengths. And we have to realise how to mobilise it. Our attendance is slowly dropping. Now, somebody pointed out to me, I think it was Reverend David Major pointed this out. You can see this blip here, the sort of 98 blip around there. Just in case you realise, you think, what happened in that year? We lost 50,000 people. did we send out a dodgy batch of wafers or something? Just to clarify, I actually think we changed our reporting standards at that point. So they've been consistent from here on down, and down being the key word. And so I put out this picture, and again I put out this picture to let us name our reality and to name that it has to change. We have to change. Yesterday is no longer going to cut it. The nature of our ministry has changed. Many of us started going to church, and the model of ministry was a full-time stipended priest. But they are the minority now. They are the minority. One-fifth of our priests, our clergy, is full-time stipended. One-fifth. One-fifth is part-time, and three-fifths are self-supporting. And so when I meet with clergy in parishes and they constantly talk about the need to get a full-time stipended ministry, I'm thinking, you're talking about the minority position now. Actually, what we have to realise is that the energy and the future lifeblood is actually recognise how to do ministry in a way which is self-supporting, which is non-stipended. That is the lifeblood, and that's a strength. The fact that we've actually already started on that journey is a strength for us. When we realise our capital reserves are declining, to actually have released a whole generation of self-supporting leadership is a strength for us. Put all these things together and we have the perfect storm. And let's name our reality. That's our reality. Our reality as a diocese, as Tony has always alluded to, is we're in a perfect storm. Where we come to this point in the future. And whatever happens, we know it is going to be difficult going ahead. And we know we're going to have to change. But the funny thing about change is this. Everybody says, yes, we're going to have to change. And then I say to them, like these men, say, hey, we need to change this. They go, no, we want to change that. I'm not changing any of my things. It's always somebody else who's got to change. No, we've all got to change. We've all got to change. And you know what? When we look at this perfect storm, and we look at what it's going to take for us to go forward as a diocese into what God has for us, and God leads us in this storm, what I think about is I think about kind of when I was growing up, and I think about the traumatic times of my life. I remember when I was about 13 years old, growing up in a little bit of a rough neighbourhood, and I remember one day, and it was my fault, I'm totally to blame for this, I had said one or two probably unwise words to a fellow young person. Anyway, he gathered round a cohort of fellow young people equally annoyed at the words I had spoken in haste. And so I remember I was surrounded at the age of 13 by these younger kids, all baying for blood. But that was all right, because I had 2 or 3 mates who were my age, a little bit older, and I thought, the 4 of us, we were outnumbered, but we had age on our side. I thought, it'd be a fair go, we'd be up for it. And so I was thinking, okay, it's not too bad. And then I noticed my mates disappeared. And it was funny that, but I thought, oh no, I know what they're doing. They're practicing ninja skills. And so they've gone into the hiding to outflank the enemy. And so I think, okay, yep, they're outflanking. Okay, when it comes, it's going to be good because they'll come in from the side with their ninja skills and it'll all be good. And then I saw them down the road, running down the road. And you've all been in those situations. You've been in those situations when you were in tumultuous times, when you were in the storm, and when you needed people to have your back, they weren't there. But I've had other amazing experiences. Me and Jenny were laughing this morning when we were remembering we used to do youth work in Wellington, and what we do is every year or so we take a group of young people and some young adults and we go up to race around Mount Ruapehu. The army used to run a race around Ruapehu where a whole lot of teams would enter, like 200 teams would enter, and you'd have to do 10 mile each, so you'd do about 15, 16k each. And we'd take all these young people, only about 2 or 3 of us were runners, everybody else was casuals, And we'd take them all up, and we had to have teams of 10, and you had to do 16k. And you'd start at 3 in the morning at the army base, and you draw lots for see who would be the first runner, because the first runner would have to go out without breakfast, and the rest of us would pack out the army mess and eat as much food as we could, because it's a massive feed. But they'd wake you, the start would be a detonator cannon, and so the whole army base would shake, boom, as everybody ran out. But we were laughing this morning about how crazy our team was. We had the craziest team. Like, we had this one young fellow who was 15 years old, wasn't a runner at all, and he had a fixation, and he really enjoyed the event, but he had a fixation about the army, and so he dressed in camo gear and ran in the heat of the sun in camo gear with commando kind of boots on. He ran it. And there's the other guy, with this other young fella, who again was just crazy, and for some reason it got so hot in the day that the asphalt started melting on the road, and so he didn't like the fact that the asphalt was sort of squeaking his shoes, and his shoes were getting stuck in the asphalt, so he took his shoes off and ran 16k in socks. It was just crazy. And it wasn't so bad. We had this other mate with us, who was, he was a mate of mine, he was a young adult, and the thing is, I don't know what happened, but he started running, within a few k he got sunstroke. And so he's in the back of the van the whole time, pale and shaking and sort of perspiring and looking clammy in the back of the van for the whole trip. I'm thinking, this is crazy, we're going to kill this guy. And then was one guy who was, we were short of numbers, so we had to say, look, anybody, can you bring a friend or an acquaintance so we've got enough people to run this race? And this guy, this person turned up with a work colleague, but they didn't really know them. And as the trip went on, and remember, we started at 3 in the morning on about 2 hours sleep, and it was bearing hot sun, and people are doing, it's very stressful, very, very stressful. It turns out this guy, who somebody had invited, was a mental health consumer, and nobody knew. And slowly as the trip went on, he got more and more paranoid, and it's getting more and more wired. And at the same time as he was mentally unwell, he was also super spiritual, hyper spiritually aware. And it got to the stage, it was hilarious, and I've got to confess this now. He finished his leg, and we're sort of, trying to be supportive, because we realised that obviously the fella's struggling. So we're all at the finish line, getting ready to support our teammate, and he kind of runs in, and he's really doing it hard, and he gets to the finish line. And so we're all there and surrounded by heaps and heaps of our team, and there's army people there and all this, and he gets to the finish line and goes, "Praise God!" And we went, "Voom!" and just left him. I was a bit embarrassed about that, but you know how it is, huh? But you know what? We were a crazy team that day. We were literally just full of so many oddballs and so many people who weren't made out for running. But we did it. We did the 100-mile race. And we're actually kind of halfway up the field. And we did it. And we've all had those experiences too. That when the going gets tough and we're really up against it, we then find there's a team of people who have got our backs and will do whatever it takes to see the journey through. And that's why this synod, the theme is being family. Because the first thing is this: if we are going to prosper through the perfect storm, if we're going to follow Jesus through the perfect storm, we have to be family. We have to huddle together. We have to strengthen our bonds between one to another. We have to do that, otherwise we will not do it. We will not make it. It is not optional. It has to happen. We have to move beyond our silo mentality. This is my ministry and that's your ministry and never the twain shall meet. We have to realise it's God's ministry. And we're on a journey